Welcome to Albuquerque, New Mexico, the land of chili peppers, balloon festivals, and a history so twisted, you'll wonder if it was written by a committee of conquistadors, outlaws, and someone who'd had one too many margaritas. Buckle up, because today we're diving into the weird, wild, and twisted history of the Duke City. Let's rewind the clock way back, long before there was a Route 66 or even a road to stick a Route 66 sign on. We're talking thousands of years ago when the Rio Grande Valley was home to native peoples like the ancestral Puebloans. These folks knew what they were doing, farming corn, beans, and squash, building pueblos out of adobe, and managing to live in the desert without air conditioning, which already makes them tougher than most of us today. If you're enjoying this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating history. Fast forward a bit, and along comes Spain in the 1500s. Spain's motto at the time was basically, if it exists, we claim it. They were conquering everything in sight. They sent explorers, missionaries, and soldiers marching north from Mexico, all in search of gold, glory, and a chance to plant giant wooden crosses in places people already lived. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680 slowed them down a bit. Imagine the locals saying, "Yeah, no thanks, Spain. We're good without your taxes and forced religion." But by the late 1600s, the Spanish came back, and by 1706, Albuquerque was officially founded. Now, here's where it gets twisted. The settlement was named after the Viceroy of New Spain, the Duke of Albuquerque. That's right, with an extra R. Somewhere along the line, the R got dropped. Maybe it was a paperwork error. Maybe someone sneezed in the middle of saying it, or maybe New Mexicans were just too busy roasting chili peppers to worry about spelling. Either way, Albuquerque became the name, and Duke City was born. Life in early Albuquerque was not exactly a fiesta. Imagine a handful of adobe buildings, a church, some dusty streets, and the constant threat of Apache raids. Spanish settlers were like, "Welcome to your new home. Hope you like farming corn and watching the horizon for horsemen who want to take it all away." The central plaza, Old Town, was the heart of the settlement. They built San Felipe de Neri Church in 1793, which still stands today, proving that adobe can last longer than half the fast food joints that open and close every year. When Mexico gained independence from Spain in 1821, Albuquerque technically became Mexican. But that didn't change life much, except the paperwork now came with a different stamp. Then, in 1846, during the Mexican-American War, the U.S. Army marched into town and basically said, "Yeah, this is ours now." The locals shrugged and kept farming. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848 made it official. Albuquerque was American territory, whether anyone wanted it or not. By the mid-1800s, Albuquerque started getting a reputation as a crossroads town. Outlaws, traders, soldiers, and wanderers all pass through. And where you get a crossroads, you get saloons, poker games, and a fair amount of gunfights. You couldn't throw a rock in 19th century Albuquerque without hitting some cowboy who swore he was faster than Billy the Kid's cousin's barber. Speaking of Billy the Kid, while the famous outlaw did most of his dirty work elsewhere in New Mexico, his legend definitely left a mark on Albuquerque. People would swear they saw him, knew him, or once sold him a burrito. That's how the West worked. Stories spread faster than telegraphs. Then came the railroad in the 1880s, and Albuquerque was never the same. Suddenly, the city had two halves. The old Spanish-style plaza and the new railroad town with wide streets, hotels, and modern businesses. It was like someone dropped two puzzle pieces from different boxes and said, "Yeah, they fit." The railroad brought money, trade, and new people. But it also brought rowdiness. Train towns were magnets for gamblers, con men, and the occasional snake oil salesman selling miracle cures made out of cactus juice and regret. The 20th century rolled in, and Albuquerque started modernizing. But it didn't lose its quirks. Route 66 came blasting through in 1926, turning Albuquerque into a roadside paradise of neon signs, diners, and motor lodges. Suddenly, travelers from all over the country were rolling through, stopping for green chili cheeseburgers and quirky souvenirs. Now, we can't talk about Albuquerque without mentioning its chili obsession. Red or green? That's the official state question in New Mexico. And Albuquerque is at the center of it. The chile here isn't just food, it's religion, it's politics, it's identity. You ask for Christmas, and you'll get both red and green on your enchiladas, proving that peace on earth is possible when you're full of chili. But let's throw in a truly twisted fact. Albuquerque is the hot air balloon capital of the world. Every October, the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta fills the skies with hundreds of colorful balloons. It's majestic, beautiful, and also slightly terrifying if you imagine being in a wicker basket 3,000 feet in the air while someone says, "Don't worry, I think the propane will hold." Albuquerque also has a modern reputation thanks to pop culture. The TV show Breaking Bad put it on the map for a whole new generation. Now, people come to take selfies at Walter White's house, eat at Los Polos Hermanos, aka Twisters, and pretend they're drug kingpins when really they're just on vacation with their kids. Twisted history meets twisted fiction, and Albuquerque laughs all the way to the tourism bank. So, what's the lesson of Albuquerque's twisted history? This city has always been a mashup of cultures, traditions, and characters, from Pueblo farmers to Spanish settlers, from Wild West cowboys to Route 66 travelers, from balloon pilots to Breaking Bad fans. It's a city that thrives on contradictions. Old and new, sacred and silly, dangerous and beautiful. And through it all, the Rio Grande keeps flowing, just like it did long before anyone thought to call this place Albuquerque. Oops. I mean Albuquerque. Whether you come for the history, the food, or just to see if the spelling mistake ever gets fixed, one thing's for sure. Albuquerque has a twisted past and a colorful present that'll keep you talking long after you've left. Now, we've already talked about Albuquerque's founding, the Spanish settlers, and how the city got its quirky name. But let's saddle up and ride into another side of Albuquerque's past. The ranches that spread out across the Rio Grande Valley and the surrounding mesas. Because if you think Albuquerque was just a quiet little mission town, think again. This place had cattle, cowboys, and enough barbed wire to make sure no one forgot it. Back in the 1700s, after the Spanish plopped down their adobe plaza, they needed more than corn and beans to keep people happy. They brought livestock, cattle, sheep, and horses. Horses, by the way, were like the Teslas of the 18th century. Everyone wanted one, few could afford one, and most of them were stolen at least once. The Pueblo peoples quickly became some of the best horsemen in the Southwest, which didn't exactly make the Spanish authorities sleep better at night. By the 1800s, the ranching culture really took hold. Albuquerque was surrounded by open land, perfect for grazing cattle. Families started spreading out, claiming land grants from Spain and later Mexico. These ranchos were more like self-sufficient mini-villages. They raised cattle, sheep, goats, and crops, all protected by adobe walls to keep out raiders and bandits. And yes, raiders were a constant problem. Imagine trying to herd cattle across the desert, only to have a group of Apache or Comanche riders show up and remind you that this land was theirs long before Spain drew maps. When the railroad arrived in the 1880s, the ranching economy exploded. Suddenly, cowboys in Albuquerque weren't just selling beef to their neighbors, they were loading cattle onto trains and shipping them east. That's when the cowboy image really hit its stride. Boots, spurs, and long days in the saddle under the New Mexico sun. Cowboys weren't glamorous movie stars. They were dirty, tired, and sunburnt, but they were the backbone of the region. Now, here's where it gets twisted. Ranch life in Albuquerque wasn't all cattle and sunsets. Oh no. There were disputes over water rights, because the Rio Grande wasn't exactly Niagara Falls. Families fought over who got to irrigate their fields and when. Some of those fights turned into lawsuits that lasted decades. In a desert, water is life, and Albuquerque ranchers guarded it like gold. And then came barbed wire, the invention that changed everything. Before the 1880s, New Mexico was mostly open range. Cattle roamed free and cowboys had to round them up every season. But once barbed wire showed up, ranchers started fencing off their land. It was cheap, easy to string up, and sharp enough to teach cattle a painful lesson about boundaries. Of course, not everyone liked it. Fence-cutting wars broke out, where disgruntled cowboys would literally ride around with wire cutters at night, undoing miles of fence just to make a point. You think traffic in Albuquerque is bad today? Imagine your herd wandering onto someone else's ranch because a cowboy didn't like your wire. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, Albuquerque ranching had become part of the Old West myth. Cowboys drove cattle into town, sold them at markets, and spent their paychecks in saloons, often in one night. Ranchers became some of the most influential families in the region, building wealth, politics, and schools. And unlike some areas, Albuquerque's ranchers had to adapt fast because the land wasn't exactly forgiving. Between droughts, flash floods, and the occasional cattle rustler, life was hard. But it built resilience, and it tied the city's history to the wider ranching culture of New Mexico. Even today, when people think of Albuquerque, they might think of hot air balloons or Breaking Bad, but ranching culture is still alive. Drive just a few miles out of the city and you'll still find cattle grazing, horses being trained, and families whose roots in ranching go back generations. The cowboy hats you see aren't just for show. They're part of a living tradition. So here's the twisted truth. Albuquerque may look like a modern city now, but it was shaped by the ranches and cowboys of the past. Those wide open spaces, the smell of cattle, the sound of hooves on dirt, those built the foundation for what the Duke City became. Without ranching, Albuquerque wouldn't just be a different city. It might not even exist at all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and come back for more twisted stories. See you next time.